This is King World News. I'm Eric King, and as we get ready to head into 2018, you're about to hear the top trends for 2018 from one of the great ones, the top trends forecaster in the world, Gerald Celente. Be sure to go to our homepage where we've already had Bill Fleckenstein, James Turk, and many others. But without any further delay, here is Gerald Celente. Joining us now is Gerald Celente. He's the director of the Trends Research, author of Trend Tracking and Trends 2000, and publisher of the Trends Journal. Gerald, these are some of the hottest trends you put together in almost a decade. I want to start off with number 3, market shock, mass murder, because we're going to get into so many of these, but market shock, mass murder. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, everyone knows that the markets are overvalued. It's no surprise to anyone. You're looking at, the Shiller Index showing PE ratios right now that rival those of warning times of pre-1929 stock market crash and the dot-com bubble. So everybody knows that it's going to happen, but then you have the other elements that are holding it back, like the tax cut that Trump is pushing through. That's going to help the big corporations. And you hear people like Jamie Dimon from J.P. Morgan Chase saying that, this will be great what they're doing because they'll be able to repatriate money at different companies and lower the tax rate and, quote, will be able to buy back stocks. Will be able to buy back stocks. No, we're not putting this money into capital improvement because these companies have been making a lot of dough anyway, and you see the facts. I'm only talking the facts. They've been putting it into stock buybacks. So we're not seeing the real economy growing, and we have to separate that from equity market growth. So again, market shock. The markets are going to have a shock. You're looking at companies, as you well know, and King World News listeners well know, that, you're looking at PE ratios of companies like Amazon at 185, depending what day you're looking at it, and hardly making any profit. So there's going to be a market shock. What will make it happen? We don't think it's going to be an economic black swan, but rather one of war. And as you well know, and listeners to King World News and subscribers to the Trends Journal, we have been saying for over a year that the war breakout is going to be in the Middle East and the target is going to be Iran. We're not worried about North Korea. If the United States attacks North Korea, say goodbye to Seoul, South Korea. Say goodbye to Japan. I mean, you're 35 miles away from the North Korean border. Is Seoul with a metropolitan area population. You have about 25 million people. So they're not going to start a war against North Korea. The reason North Korea is going nuclear, and they made it very clear because they saw what the United States did to Saddam Hussein. They saw what they did to Gaddafi when they gave up their nuclear weapons, and they're not giving up theirs. So we're not worried about a war breaking out with North Korea. Our concern is what's going on in South Korea, in the Middle East. You have that crown prince, this 32-year-old guy that started the war in Yemen 2 years ago at 30 years old. Killed over 15 million Yemenis, according to the United Nations and other organizations. It's the world's greatest humanitarian crisis now. Over 1 million people dying of cholera, for example. Mass starvation. And they lost the war in Syria. And the Saudis are the ones with the United States and the Arab League that backed it. So now they're blaming this loss on Iran. And they're blaming Iran for supporting the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Oh, the Houthi rebels. Oh, they're rebels? How long are they living in this country called Yemen? Only about 1,000 years. And how long has the Saudi government been there? Well, it made them in 1932. Okay, so you're telling guys that are invading another country that hasn't done anything to you. Your country was formed in 1932. These people have been there, have sections of that country for 1,000 years, and you're calling them rebels, and when you kill them and they retaliate against you, well, they is militants, and Iran's behind it. Iran's not behind it for most of the data we see, and if they are, only marginally. But why shouldn't the people that are being attacked fight back? Going back, now an alliance is being formed with the United States. Go back to Trump on the campaign trail, being anti-Iranian from day one. Worst deal I ever known. We gave him $150 billion. You didn't give him anything. You gave him back the money they took after the 1979 Iranian crisis. It was their dough. And then you see what's happened with Israel now also making deals with Saudi Arabia. These are facts. This isn't speculation. So now you have the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the United States and Israel teaming up against Iran. And you even hear our UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, saying that a coalition has to be built to go against Iran, which the United States calls the worst terrorist organization, or worst terrorist supporters in the world, which is totally infactual. The Saudis are, and the United States has done a good job in it with overthrowing Gaddafi and also trying to overthrow Assad. Those are the people that the United States and the Saudis have supported. So, going back, the Black Swan event. When war breaks out in the Middle East, the equity markets around the world are going to crash. This whole thing has been built up, as everybody knows, on digital dollars not worth the paper they're not printed on. You look what just happened in Europe. They didn't raise interest rates again. They didn't raise them again in the EU, in the UK. They're keeping the Ponzi scheme going. The black swan to us that's going to bring back in the market shock is going to be an outbreak of war in the Middle East, and when that happens, you're going to see precious metals skyrocket. And that's our forecast of one of the top 10 trends for 2018.
Gerald, obviously you're starting off there with some actionable ways that people can make money, especially when you talk about the metals starting to skyrocket, and that would coincide with this next leg higher in gold and silver that's supposed to take them above $2,000 gold, $50 silver. But I want to get into some other areas that you have here on the top trend forecast for 2018. There's so many great ones here, Joe, but we touched on it before. But brick and mortar bounce. Very quickly, can you talk about that?
Yeah, look at the retail sales coming in for the year in the United States. They're not doing so bad. The only reason why there's a drain in the malls, I had forecast this in my book, Trends 2000, international best-selling book, back in 1996. They overbuilt, and they're all the same. You go into one, you go into them all. So what's going on? Look what happened with the mergers. At one time, they used to be individual creativity. And then you had the Macy's. When I was a kid, there were 3 Macy's. There was one, down in Herald Square in New York, one up in Yonkers, and one out in Long Island. And there were a load of entrepreneurs with their own shops and their own styles and getting it from all over the country and all over the world. Now when the bigs bought up everything, you got one ugly size that fits all. That's what's killing brick and mortar. Oh, yeah, are people buying things online? Of course they are. And it will continue. But there's a brick and mortar bounce in places where they understand that you have a clientele that wants uniqueness, beauty, and the personal touch, rather than the bottom line corporate algorithm mentality that the big corporations have created and continue to try to shove down our throats. Look at the beautiful experience you get when you go into a big box store. It's like walking into a big self-storage unit. The brick and mortar bounce is going to come from another trend that we see, and they're all tied together in our globalnomic perspective, where all things are connected, and that is organic growth cities. Once upon a time, we're over here in colonial Kingston, New York, third Dutch settlement, 90 miles north of New York City on the Hudson River, deepest in-water port on the Hudson. When New York City and the whole area was building, This place was putting out brick and Rosendale cement that was the best in the country. You had a canal that was bringing down iron ore and steel and bringing and coal, shipping it down to New York. And then the Industrial Revolution died, and so too did Kingston. But then it came back. IBM was here. Mainframe computers. They left. It died. Now it's coming back. Why? Like a lot of other beautiful old cities that once had originality and the taste of locality. It's coming back not because it's reliant on a natural resource or an industry. It's growing organically. People are coming to these places around the country because of the unique beauty that they represent, the beautiful buildings, the locations near major metropolitan areas, airports, and other travel destinations. And goes back to brick and mortar bounce. Entrepreneurs are opening up the shops and filling the gaps that the bigs left behind.
Gerald, before we move on, earlier you talked about gold and silver and how they were going to skyrocket. A company that has a legendary management team is unleashing a massive drill program in the most exciting and prolific gold belt in the world. The company is Gold Standard Ventures, website goldstandardv.com, symbol GSV in Canada and on the New York Stock Exchange. A second exciting company is a buyout candidate the Gold Corp has already made a huge investment in. The company I'm talking about is Orin Resources, symbol AUG in Canada and on the New York Stock Exchange. And finally, David Broughton, who made huge discoveries for Robert Friedland at Kamoa and Flat Reef, will be leading the drilling for the massive exploration Maple Gold Mines has planned. Symbol MGM in Canada and MGMLF in the U.S. Now back to the interview with Gerald. Gerald, before we move on, this does have to do with investing opportunities in the future as well, but follow the Yellow Silk Road having to do with China.
Yes, you go back to China, back in 206 BC all the way through to 220 AD, they had the Silk Road trade routes that linked China, Europe, India, and other countries on the Afro-Eurasian landmass. Now they're doing a new version of it, a 21st century version, China's One Belt, One Road initiative. This is real. And what we're saying is one of our top trends, as you well know, for 2017 was buy and sell China. China has their debt problems. They're not going anywhere. This is a country of 1.3 billion people. The United States is the 0.3. That's how many people we have. When they joined the World Trade Organization back in 2001, there were only 5% of the population was middle class. Now it's almost 35%. What China is doing, the business of China is business. They're buying up ports, airports, and acquisitions of businesses around the world. You're looking at developments, again, another one of our top trends for 2017 was Silicon Valley, Rust Belt 2.0. which demonstrated that China would begin to outpace the United States, which was once the world's innovation leader in high tech. Now it's losing some of that to China. Matter of fact, even Google is moving into Beijing because of the artificial intelligence that they have over there that in many ways is either equaling or exceeding America's technology. Going back to the Yellow Silk Road. We believe, again, the business of China is business. The business of America is war. We keep waging wars. They keep buying buildings. We blow up, they buy. It's a different mentality. And a very important thing, and we're the only people that we know are saying this, we call China an inside-out government. That means that whether you like what they're doing or don't like what they're doing, they're creating their business community and their culture from the Communist Party rule. That's where the decisions are being made. Again, whether you like them or not, but they do it with the belief that they're doing it to grow the economy. In the United States, it's an outside-in direction. So it's not focused because the corporations tell the politicians what they want. Just look at the tax bill. Just look at anything that passes. So what happens in the United States, it's an outside in, so you don't have a focus. You have special interests. So that's why we see China as growing and the United States losing where the economy of the world is going. So China is way ahead in the United States right now. And even when you look at their GDP, let's say it even comes in at 6%. It's 6.5 to 6.9 now. What's the United States hovering around? 2.5? So put the big picture together. Follow the yellow Silk Road. China's already the world's number 2 economy and the world's largest trading nation, and we believe it will continue to expand its presence on the world economic stage in 2018.
Gerald, the top trend here, cryptomania, cash, and talk about that for the listeners globally.
Well, look, just to make this clear, when the Bitcoin thing happened, I probably even said it on your show. I said, I don't see it. I said, I'm not sure about this, but I don't want any of this digital currency. I'd rather hold gold. That was my beginning thoughts of this. And again, we look at things to the way they are, not the way we want them to be. And then we started seeing the growth of it. And it caught my attention when, going back to China, all things are connected. It's globalnomic. Go back to 2015, early 2016. Shanghai index is going down, and so is the yuan. Remember, China has 1.3 billion people, almost 35% of the population, middle class. So what happens? They're losing their dough. Their currency is being devalued. They started going into Bitcoin. That's what drove Bitcoin prices up when they started hitting the $1,500 level. 90% of the action was coming out of China. And then what happened? Take a look at the rest of Asia, Japan, South Korea, one country after another. The United States is only 20% of this market. So, people are looking for alternatives to their fiat currencies. This is the millennial generation's gold. It's a different world that they live in. Going back to China, you don't pay anything with cash or credit cards. You're using your app. The world is becoming cashless. And when you're cashless, you're not connected to the coin of the realm. There's no more in God we trust. So what they're doing is they're saying, this new millennial generation and others, that we don't have any coins that connect us to our country. We see how they're manipulating this thing. We don't want any fiat currencies. You take Bitcoin, for example. There's supposed to be only 21 million set to be in existence. So now you have a supply and demand issue here. Number 2, China, on September 30th of this year, banned Bitcoin exchanges. And at that time when they banned them, because of the actions that they were taking, all the Bitcoin action in the world, it went down to 5% in China. 5% from 90% at one time. You know what it is today? 20%. But they banned it. The governments can't ban it. They're going on these sites that the government can't hack into, secure sites like Telegram, and they're buying up what they want. And then the other aspect of this, we see cryptocurrency in their minds as we're looking at it, they see this as a populist coin. And again, not a coin of the realm. And then finally, two other important points. Venezuela. United States put sanctions on them. They got a lot of problems. Their bolivar isn't worth anything. But now they're talking about coming out with a petro crypto coin. And you know what's going to be backed by? Oil, gas, gold, and diamond reserves. And now doubling down on the Venezuelan ditch the dollar pitch, it's reported that Russia may use cryptocurrencies in oil trade to challenge the sanctions that the Americans put on it and not deal with the petrodollar. And as you have been reporting over and over again, that China is paying for its oil from even countries like Saudi Arabia, including Iran, Venezuela, Russia, in yuan, that they could cash into gold. So what we're looking at is a new world order. And again, when the petrodollar dies, say goodbye to the buck, man. Poof, that's when you're going to see that inflation that everybody's talking about. It'll rival what's going on in Venezuela. So that's what we're saying. Put the whole picture together. Don't take a stand on it. And finally, you saw what happened now that cryptocurrencies are going to be traded on futures exchanges. It's already on the CBOE, and shortly it will be on the CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I remember when I began trading gold in the late 1970s, and I remember the boom in the futures markets in the 80s, early 90s. That's what you're going to start seeing, because right now the futures markets are quiet, commodity markets. So they're looking for new action. So will there be high volatility in this? You bet there will. Will there be cryptos to say goodbye to? Yes, there will. But, Derek, we see this as a long-term trend. And again, the swings are going to be great. The volatility will be high. But we don't see them going away. And the governments, as we just shown with China, as hard as they try to stop them, in this digital world of blockchain technology, you know, you're doing it on your own. You don't need the banksters, and it's bringing people in a new direction in the new millennium. So we see the growth in Bitcoin showing that more and more people are going to expand investments and gamble by purchasing other cryptos.
And Gerald, for people around the world that want to subscribe to the Trends Journal, I've always encouraged them to do that. But you have so many actionable ideas here in this Top Trends for 2018, and they can read about all of these in great detail by subscribing right now. Can you tell them how they can do that? Because they can do it online for less than 29 cents a day.
Yes, and as listeners and subscribers to King World News, what we're going to tell your listeners is to go to our website, trendsresearch.com. Click on Trend Updates, and you will be able to access all of the top 10 trends of 2018. And again, I've been in this a lot of years, and never before have I seen trends that are going to shape and shake the world as these are. And the trends for 2018 are a roadmap into the future that's going to affect virtually every dimension of our lives, and you won't get these trends anywhere else. Money back guaranteed. Because if you like these trends, you can subscribe to the Trends Journal. It's only $99 a year. But plus the Trends Journal, Trend Alerts, Trends Monthlies, Trends in the News broadcasts, it's the only place you're going to get history before it happens. And to make my point and to drive it home, stay tuned to the mainstream news. If they're not talking about sexual harassment or the Russians are coming, the only thing they're going to cover about the new trends that are developing in 2018 are going to be nothing, because all they're going to be doing is looking back at 2017. That's all the mainstream media gives you. Yesterday's news next week. So if you want to see history before it happens, hear history before it happens, go to trendsresearch.com. It's the only place where you're going to see the top trends for 2018 that will be shaping and shaking the world.
Gerald Celente, Director of the Trends Research and author of Trend Tracking at Trends 2000 and publisher of the Trends Journal. Thank you so much for joining us, Gerald.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for all that you do, and all the best in the new year.
Be sure to tune in as we will continue to release interviews with the top people in the world throughout the week. Also, make sure to check out the King World News blog.